between capital gains, the CCA, the long-term care tax, all of that going on, and they still can't manage their money. They still don't have enough money for all the things they want to spend it on. This segment is brought to you by Eastside Weight Loss Clinic. I'm down 37 pounds on the program, and I lost most of that in just 2 months. Do what I did and what so many other undivided viewers have done. Schedule your free 15-minute consultation today at eastsideweightlossclinic.com. The state of Washington still doesn't have enough money, because as it brings in more revenue, it just bloats. It grows the size of government to the point where the Washington Research Council, and I was afraid of this. I mean, I kind of expected it, but they came out, and this is a nonpartisan organization that's dedicated to fiscal oversight and responsibility and just looking at the numbers of the money coming in, money going out. Money coming in, money going out. And what they have said is that Washington faces an estimated $5.1 billion shortfall. And they don't mince words here. It's not because we've hit some sort of economic downturn. It's because the state has a spending problem. It says revenues did not unexpectedly drop due to a recession. Instead, the estimated $5.1 billion shortfall for 2025-2027 is the result of choices made by the legislature. It says it's going to outline more about how this happened in an upcoming brief, but it says, in short, this is very simple. In short, the state increased spending even as it knew revenues would come in more slowly. Further, the legislature used reserves to increase general spending. As a result, remaining reserves are expected to be insufficient to cover the shortfall. And when it talks about this increased spending, this line to me I had to pick out of this report. It said, before the 2013-2015 budget, average biennial growth in per capita spending, adjusted for inflation, was 0.1%. So the average spending per citizen, essentially, was before 2013 about the increase, about 0.1%. That's pretty modest, and that's even accounted for inflation. Since 2013, 2015, the average growth every biennium has been 7.6%. So since 2013, and what happened in 2013? I mean, since 2013, we've really had complete Democratic control in Olympia. It's been increasingly unchallenged. So Democrats have grown their majorities in the House and the Senate. Of course, we've had a Democrat in the governor's office for 40 years. But as their majorities have increased and solidified, their spending has gotten completely out of control, to the point where before that, we're maybe talking about 0.1% increases in the biennial budget every 2 years. And now the average is 7.6%. And they have all these new taxes. Again, go back to think about all the new taxes that they have passed to pay for all these things they say are completely necessary that they've just come up with in the last 10 years. Between capital gains, the CCA, the long-term care tax, all of that going on. And they still can't manage their money. They still don't have enough money for all the things they want to spend it on. There was this chart included in this Washington Research Council report, which I think is very informative. It says this is not a revenue shortfall. Budget shortfalls can occur when revenues unexpectedly drop due to a recession. But in the current case, biennial revenues have not declined, but rather spending growth has outpaced normal revenue growth. Wow, is that not budgeting 101? You know, spending growth has outpaced normal revenue growth. It says adjusted for inflation, state spending per capita grew substantially coming out of the Great Recession. And you can see it if you're watching the show today, not listening. The revenue growth on the chart it's just going off the charts. So they have more than enough. And look, the basic needs of a populace and what the government should be focused on, those haven't changed. The basic needs of a populace, maybe some things like growth that have led to transportation challenges where, hey, we've got to put more money in transportation to update outdated infrastructure. We've got more people on the roadways, et cetera, et cetera. But it does not account for that significant of a growth in spending. What that accounts for is runaway spending where they're spending a ton of your money on pet projects and things that are just like the homelessness crisis. I mean, Governor Inslee, this is a perfect example. Homelessness has gotten worse than ever. So, of course, what does the government say? Well, it's worse than ever, so now we need to spend more money on it than ever. Which you might think, well, that kind of makes sense, right? If you've got more homeless people, you're going to have to spend more money. But then you've got things like Governor Jay Inslee's right-of-way initiative, where he's like, we're going to clean up those homeless camps along the state freeways and we're going to get them all looking spiff. But then you do the numbers and you realize they were spending almost $1 million per person to remove them from a right-of-way and get them out of homelessness. That's how you lead. That's how you get to a situation like this, where you have more taxes than ever before, taking more money from people than ever before, where you have more spending than ever before, and you still don't have enough money to maintain all the programs that you have in place, because you're just wasting it. And things aren't getting any better. I mean, it's that old question, like, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Is our state better off today than it was 4 years ago? Is our state better off today than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago? The answer has to be no. Crime's worse, homelessness is worse, drug abuse is worse, affordability is worse, traffic is worse, transportation is worse. In every metric, things are worse. And you know what else is worse? The environment. You know, Governor Inslee is supposed to be the climate governor, and they're pushing all these things they say will help, but he hasn't met any of his climate goals. Carbon emissions are actually up. Recycling is actually down. All of these things we said, we're going to set this lofty goal and do this and, you know, push all these taxes through that are going to help the environment. It hasn't helped the environment at all. So they will tax you as much as you're willing to be taxed without holding them accountable. And that's what this could not perfectly, there's nothing that could sum up better why we need to say yes to all those initiatives. And you might be saying, well, Brandi, now they're facing a $5.1 billion shortfall. So if we pass all those initiatives and we repeal the tax on capital gains, we repeal the Climate Commitment Act, we make the long-term care tax optional, isn't that going to make this budget deficit even worse? Yeah, it is. Heard it here, folks. Yeah, it is. But the thing is it's going to force them to reevaluate their priorities. They are not going to be able to spend billions of dollars on these failed climate policies. They're going to have to actually do what a family does, look at their budget, look at the necessities, and strip away the last 10 years of runaway spending. And that's the accountability portion. Is like, yeah, I'm saying it right here. They are going to be in a financial pickle. If all these initiatives pass, the state of Washington will be in a financial pickle. But it's one of their own making. They deserve it. State lawmakers deserve to have to go to Olympia and sit in their little dome and make some hard decisions, just like families do when they go around their dinner table and sit down with their spouse and make hard financial decisions. Your budget hasn't bloated in this way over 10 years since the recession. And yet we continue to elect people who take more and more and more money from us without any results. And despite all the money we've given them, new taxes passed just in the last 5 years, they still can't create a balanced budget with it. They're still facing a $5.1 billion shortfall. And what are they going to do? They're going to come to you and they're going to ask for more money. So first of all, this is exactly what's going to happen. If we don't pass the initiatives, the very first thing they're going to do to try to close this $5.1 billion shortfall, any guesses? They're going to reduce the threshold for capital gains. If the capital gains tax remains in effect, if the initiative isn't successful to repeal it, the very first thing they'll do is say, we're facing this $5.1 billion shortfall. Woe is us. They'll probably blame the pandemic. Oh, it's pandemic related. They refuse to be introspective. And they will say we have to reduce the threshold for capital gains. And it'll no longer be about taxing the richest 2%. It'll be about finding a way, a backdoor income tax to tax every single one of you. And create your primary home will be a capital gains. They'll reduce the threshold like they already tried before from taxing people who only get $250,000 or more in profit on the sales of stocks and bonds. They'll reduce it to $15,000, which remember, they already tried to do that once. So look at how the pieces are shaping up. They're coming together if you just will look at it, if you'll pay attention. Spending's out of control. They're still outspending what they're bringing in despite all the new taxes because they spend money on utter nonsense, only for the school system to be failing, spending more money on schools than ever before, yet all our test scores are in the toilet. Spending more money on transportation than ever before, look at transportation infrastructure. Spending more money on homelessness, substance abuse, mental health than ever before. Nothing they're doing is working because they don't really care if it's working as long as they can bring more money in. And the truth is, if something's failing, and it's so bad that it's impacting your life, like public safety, They stripped law enforcement of the ability to do their jobs. Now we have the lowest number of police officers per capita of any state in the nation, down hundreds of state troopers, down 700 Seattle police officers. And what are they doing? Well, things are so bad, they're hoping you're desperate enough to give them more money. What did Bob Ferguson say his plan is? To throw immediately $100 million at police staffing. Where do you think that money comes from? You and I. So they make things so bad, they make you so desperate that then they hope that you'll give them more money and they'll just dole it out to their cronies and allies, and it won't actually make the problem better. Like homelessness. What did Jay Inslee say during his State of the State address like 2 years ago now? The fundamental underlying cause of our homeless crisis is a lack of affordable housing, and it's so bad, so if you'll just give me $4 billion, would you give me $4 billion? I promise we'll do better this time. I promise, as the governor who got us into this mess, that if you just give me $4 billion more, I'll get us out of this mess. Which, of course, he won't. Because the issue isn't money. The issue is policy. The issue is policy. And I use Andrea Suarez as a good example with We Heart Seattle. She can go out, clean up homeless camps, connect people to services for a fraction of the costs of the government doing it. It's because that whole industrial complex that they have around homelessness, it's designed to pay people salaries and to create government positions. And those government positions would go away if you solved the crisis of homelessness. And they'll never allow that. So they're never going to solve these things. So by passing the initiatives, yes, we're going to put the state in a financial pickle. But it is a long overdue financial pickle. I just like saying the word pickle. Long overdue financial pickle where they're going to have to sit down and make tough decisions because the people of this state are going to demand that they do so. And if we do not stop the runaway spending now, if we do not stop the endless taxes now, again, it's just going to get much, much worse. And it will immediately get worse with them lowering the threshold for the tax on capital gains. So be advised. And you know what? Don't say I didn't warn you. I know you guys don't need to know this. I know you all voted yes to pay less, but you need to tell your friends, you need to tell your family, and you need to tell them it's not just about these initiatives. It's about what happens if they don't pass. It's about what happens next. And they will be so emboldened to continue to come up with new ways to tax us, to fund programs and jobs that aren't fixing anything. And the last 15 years is proof of that. I don't know what other proof people would need.